Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm Stephanie, and I'm a publisher at Red Penguin Books, where we publish books of all types and genres. So whether you have a manuscript all ready for publication, a book still in your head, or perhaps even 300 sheets of loose leaf shoved in a drawer. And yes, we receive envelopes of loose leaf all the time. Please visit us at redpenguinbooks.com and unleash your inner author. I'm so thrilled to be joined today by three authors who have, well, they have undoubtedly unleashed themselves, sometimes several times over. Today, we're going to welcome author Sean Valiente, author of The Lightning Knight, The Knights of the Nine. You can visit him and learn more at seanvalente.com. Also, E.G. Stone, the author of the trilogy, The One Who Could Not Fly, To Never Hear the Song, and The Forsaking of the Blind, in addition to many, many other fantasy books and series, egstone.com. And finally, S.L. Harby, the author of Shadows of a Dream. And you can find more at readslharby.com. I'm so thrilled that these three fabulous and prolific fantasy writers will be joining us today. Now on with the show. Welcome to Between the Covers, the show for readers and writers and lovers of books. I'm so excited to be joined by three fabulous fantasy authors this episode. And our first author is going to be Sean Valiente. Sean is the author of The Lightning Knight. Wait until you see this book cover. Sean, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
You have a copy of your book there so we could show off, since I just said what a gorgeous cover.
Woo! I do.
The Knights
It's a beautiful cover.
Isn't that gorgeous? Wow. Oh, it's a fat book too. Look at how fat.
Oh, aren't all fantasy books just giant fat books?
So give us a little bit of a synopsis so we can get on.
Yeah, so The Lightning Knight is the first book in a planned, very long series, and I promise all my readers that I will not George R.R. Martin you and keep you waiting forever. or like the Wheel of Time, just die. So I promise everything will come out. But it's the first book. It's a very kind of classical fantasy story, a la your Aragorn or Lord of the Rings, where it's got a hero's journey. It's got magic. It's got dragons. It's got swords and sandals. It's kind of got all that classic fantasy stuff.
Sandals?
Well, sword and sandal, sword and sorcery. It's kind of the.
I've heard sword and sorcery. I've not heard of sword and sandal.
Oh, yeah, I love sword and sandal. You got me. You got me, bro. I'm right there with you.
Okay, you gotta tell us about the sandals now.
So sword and sandals is more of a reference to kind of like the action part of kind of a sword and sorcery epic or fantasy epic where they might not have boots, they probably have like sandals on. Right, so like think like Roman,
Makes
Greek
sense.
that kind of thing, right? So Colosseums, those sorts of situations, Achilles and Troy.
Got it. That makes more sense now.
Yeah, so I mean, none of my characters
knew what he was talking about.
Right. None of my characters actually probably wear sandals. I never mentioned them, but that's kind of like the genre, right? And it has this classical sort of hero's journey, but it's very flipped on its head, where the main protagonist, whose name is Oliver Quatermain, is actually more of a mentor to the chosen one. And so we see kind of the story from the mentor's perspective, where in fact the mentor doesn't know anything. But he's been tasked with helping out the chosen one. So it's just like, it's an Obi-Wan and Luke relationship, but instead of Obi-Wan knowing anything about the Force, Obi-Wan knows nothing about the Force. So that's the kind of situation we are with in the book. But at its core, it's really kind of this lens around teenage relationships and what it's like to be kind of that late teenager who they have all these emotions, these really big ideas and emotions, but they don't know how to express them properly, right? They kind of oscillate between very extremes of like, really energetic and excited about something to like just like pity and hate and just like, oh my God, how could I do that? And you know, that kind of thing. So it's really taking that sort of focus point, and the character relationships between Oliver and all the people he meets.
Fantastic. Now, you seem pretty darn confident that you are going to be writing and writing and writing and not letting your readers down like George Martin. Do you have like, 9,000 books in your back pocket, so you're ready for that kind of a promise?
I not in my back pocket, but in my head.
Okay.
So
Best place for them.
right? If they were in my pocket, they'd be available to everybody. But yeah, I've been kind of working on this series really for about a decade now. Just taking notes, whether they're on my phone or on a computer. You know, and I think, you know, as the other authors will probably attest, when you're writing, you're probably thinking about your book at all times, whether you're in a social setting or with your friends or with your family or watching TV or in the shower or driving. At all times, you're always like, oh, wait a second, that could be a good idea for my book. And you're being socially awkward with your friends and things like that. So I have a lot of these ideas down. Each book, I have a interesting format that I'm playing with where each book is split into two parts. The first part is in a very first person kind of YA perspective. You're really in the person's head. You're seeing everything from their view, which kind of distorts how the world really is, right? So like if I were to describe my friends, I would describe them how I think of them, but they might have a lot more layer and depth to them that I don't even notice or think about. And you really see that with Oliver and how he thinks about his friends and stuff. And then the second part of the book is all in third person. It's really kind of like you're watching a movie or watching a TV series, and it's going forward, like the pace goes insane. So each book is going to be built like that, but also beyond that, each book will have a different kind of main character. So Oliver is the main character of this first book, and in the second book, it's going to be a different character. And at some point, they'll meet Oliver, and the adventure continues. But you're not just seeing, it's not Harry Potter and his friends, it's all the people at Hogwarts, and everybody gets their own book. So
That's interesting.
Wow.
yeah, I have 9 or 10 books planned out, ready to go. I just have to actually sit down and write them.
That is, of course, the hardest part.
Right. What's interesting in my writing style is, and you know, if you're ever on writing Twitter, you'll see this, right? Are you a pantser or are you a plotter?
Yeah.
And I'm a little bit of a both. So I have point A and point B. Like I have my character where they are. I know where they want to go. I have no idea how they're going to get there. So for me, it's basically transcribing, watching a TV series in my head, down on paper. And that's probably the most exciting part, right? Because I'm like, oh, I wonder what they're going to do next. Let's find out. And then all of a sudden, new things happen or new characters pop up. The biggest one being Poe in this first book, who is this quote unquote chosen one. He was never in my head at all, ever. And then I started writing, and one day he just walked through the doors of the school, and I was like, oh, cool. Here's this new character I get to play with. So
That's awesome.
yeah, so I do have the whole
book at some point, this Poe.
We'll see. It's a little bit of a mystery of who gets what book and which characters will be, and there's a lot of red herrings and things like that. It's very, very classic epic fantasy where there's a lot going on in the first book, and not everything is tied with a bow, and you just have to read on to the next one.
Wow.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
There was a sci-fi series, I think, in the 80s, which spotlighted the mentor over the actual chosen one. Trying to remember the name of it. The book they did on the chosen one was called The Man Who Never Missed. And I think the mentor one was called The Journey of 1,000 Steps, or The Walk of 1,000 Steps, or something. It's sitting on my bookcase. I just can't go get it. But it was fantastic. And when I read it then, I thought it was a fantastic take on that genre of the chosen one, and and his mentor. I'm really looking forward to reading your book. So
yeah,
that cover sold me in the.
Oh, I spent God knows how many hours just walking through local bookstores, and just like picking up every single book and saying like, okay, what is a book cover supposed to look like? What are the different like colors I want to use? What's gonna pop? What kind of makes me say, oh, I'd like to pick up this book? Because I mean, ultimately, your story is what sells the book, or what makes the book and makes you want to read it. But the cover, like, we do
Absolutely.
judge books by their cover.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
Yes.
So I wanted something that was sort of epic and very fantasy, but also, you pick it up and you go, oh, well, that looks cool. I'll read the back of it.
I have to ask, you said you walked through a whole bunch of local bookstores. Where do you live that you have local bookstores? I want in.
Um, well, just north of Boston, there's or just around the outskirts of Boston, there's a bunch of different little bookstores,
Nice.
and also the Barnes and Noble of it all is always around. But there's there's definitely like a feel and a smell when you're in those like
Oh yeah.
local bookstores that are like on those uh, very classic little town streets where there's like little shops, and then all of a sudden there's like a bookstore and you're like, how are you still in business? I'm so happy you're in business, but how are you still in business? And
Yeah.
I always feel like you just said, so happy to see you.
Well, brick and mortar bookstores are actually on the rise, or at least they were before
Before COVID.
Yeah.
I love a good bookstore.
Oh
I
my
love
God.
love a good new bookstore, old bookstore.
Yeah.
Oh, and I found them. These are the
Oh.
Man Who Never Missed and the 97 Step by Steve Perry.
Oh, fantastic.
If you get a chance, they're probably hella cheap on Kindle, and it's a really good story and a good take on the chosen one sort of genre.
I'll have to look that up.
yeah, I mean, when I was writing, I love fantasy, right? Like that's like if I'm reading stuff, I'm usually trying to pick up fantasy or sci-fi, and oftentimes I'll do some other books as well, but those are my comfort food, right? My pizza.
Right.
And when I was writing, fantasy is really really cool in that you can take it 500 different directions, right? You can have this very classic fantasy story, you can have something that speaks more to a specific type of person or to a specific type of experience that you have, or anything like that, right? And we're seeing this really awesome boon in fantasy of all these different stories. And then at the end of the day, for me, like I love all these different stories, but at the end of the day, I was like, man, I just want to kind of get back to this kind of comfort of this classic sort of hero's journey that's a little bit flipped on its head, and that's how I ended up writing it, right? So it's not like my story will give you a lot of like the emotional feels that you expect, but it's not going to make you think differently about the world. It's more watching your favorite TV show versus like watching John Oliver or something and trying to learn.
There's nothing wrong with that. Like
right?
The comfort foods and the comfort genres are those for a reason, right?
Exactly.
People enjoy them. I enjoy a good fantasy story, even if I've read it 100 times.
Oh yeah. Yes.
There's a reason why they sell.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
A little bit. Yes.
There's absolutely a reason why they sell. And you obviously did your research in making sure that it looks like people's expectations. That's huge.
Yeah. So my background personally is, I've worked for a lot of startup companies in finance and accounting and operations and stuff. So I have a very kind of entrepreneurial mind and spirit.
Nice.
So the idea of I'm self-published, and the idea of self-publishing was actually, it wasn't, a fallback for me. It was more of like, this is actually what I want to do.
Right.
So, a lot of that was going into seeing what other self-published authors do, seeing what some of my friends who are self-published did, and seeing how I could replicate that that professionality to the cover, and to like the formatting, and to making sure I find like a proper editor, or making sure I find a proper like designer, and things like I'm not really good at, but you could probably get away with if you're self-publishing, and it would be fine. But I wanted to like make sure it looked like Simon and Schuster or Orbitz had actually published this, when really it's quote unquote Valiente publishing.
Good for you. It looks fabulous. You totally nailed it. You did a great
Without
job.
a doubt.
Thanks.
Yes.
Absolutely. Now give me a little bit of a timetable. What are we talking here for the next one in the series, just for our readers?
Yeah, so I'm currently working on it. If all goes to plan, I will have it out potentially around December of this year. So I'm gonna hopefully, and if I make this promise to readers, then I'll have to stick to it, right? I'm gonna try and do a release every year or every other year for the series, so that way, I like it'll be done hopefully in the next 10 to 15 years, and I can go on with my life.
Reasonable time frame
Go
for
on with your
people who
life,
have
yeah.
other things going on. That's about like the time frame I was looking at. I hear people like, oh yeah, I release a book a month. It's like, I don't know how you do that. Like,
I
and
mean-
get it written, edited, formatted, cover done,
I think-
publicity.
I mean, maybe there are only like 5,000 words. I don't know.
I don't like.
I've seen a lot of that in some like Facebook groups that I'm part of, and I think a lot of it is people who are writing like crime thrillers or romance novels or these kind of trade paperbacks that maybe aren't as epic or intertwined as like us with fantasy,
Right.
but are still they're really proper stories. They're a little bit different in how writing and how much writing you need to do and how much of an editing process you need to get done. And for instance, I know of a few people who already have like editors lined up, and they might have like 2 or 3 different editors. So one book's done, send it to the first editor. While they're doing that stuff, they're writing the second book, and they send that to a different editor, and back and forth, and kind of piecemealing it together like that. But
Okay.
I mean, for fantasy, God, I think the biggest thing I've learned is that the time spent away from my book has been just as valuable as the time I've spent writing my book, right? So I'll write a draft, I'll take, a couple of weeks away from it, really let it marinate in my head, and then come back to it and be like, oh, actually, this is a better idea. And, the first draft of my first book to the actual thing that was printed is drastically different, mostly because I took off like a couple of months between drafts and was just able to come back to it a little bit fresh.
And it's nice to have some time to like live, see friends and family, meal,
Not be
you know.
socially awkward.
Maybe in free time. What is this weird concept?
Really, what would anybody do with all that free time? Who knows?
Well,
Well, our
read
next
books?
guest, E.G.
Read
Stone,
books.
author of One Who Could Not Fly, can tell us about what she does with her free time. I don't know that she has any because she's busy.
Free time. Ah, my tail feathers.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if there's any free time for you either, but
Thank you,
look at the
Kat.
kitty on your lap.
Oh yes, this is Minnie, as in the moocher, not the mouse.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I was about to comment about the cat
Cat
peeking
butt.
your head in the picture.
Yes. Thank you, Minnie. That's super helpful.
Oh, she's a cutie.
Thank you, dear. You're super cute and not very helpful.
Yes, well, you can maybe block her for a second and hold up your book.
I'll try. So this, oh, thank you. Ow, ow. That's lovely. As she walks all over me. So this is the first book in the Wing Cycle. It is a trilogy. It's actually complete. It follows Ravenna, who is a sylph, lives on an island, sort of isolated from the world, and she gets captured by beings that she thought were mythical, humans. And so it's kind of human discovering magical thing, except the other way around. And there's intrigue and ends up being a war, and we've got dragons and a sort of a land that has forgotten a lot of things, relearning that, oh yeah, these things exist, and maybe we shouldn't have forgotten about them. And
Oh,
then
that's
there's
awesome.
Minnie. Really.
Yeah, you said it was a trilogy and it is complete. So we'll
Yes, 3 books. Oops, those are in the wrong order. So you've got The One Who Could Not Fly with
Right.
a cat. Stop standing on the keyboard. Ow.
How you get any work done now?
Well, she woke up, and she's young enough to be energetic when she wakes up.
adorable.
So yeah, book 2 is To Never Hear the Song.
Oh, I love your theming of the covers there.
Yeah,
these
my cover
covers are
designer.
awesome.
They are
My cover
really
designer.
nice.
I let her do all of the deciding on how these things should look because I
Beautiful.
know like nothing about graphics, so it's all her. And then the third one is The Forsaking of the Blind.
Very nice.
That's awesome.
So
Yeah.
they- it is complete. Audiobook for book 1 is in production, which is fun.
Ooh, what are you using for your audiobook production?
I started with Findaway Voices because I did that for a cyberpunk piece that I published in 2019, and it worked great. But for some reason, production just sort of stalled halfway through the audition process, and I don't know why. I think there was a glitch in their system. So I went to ACX, and I actually found a narrator who narrated Craig Price's fantasy novella, I guess, one of them. And so she auditioned for me, and it was just like fantastic. I mean, how do these narrator people do so well with voices and everything? It's amazing.
How did you find the process of finding the right voice work out for you? Because I found for myself, like in my head, I'm like, okay, this is how I want the, you know, voice of the protagonist to be, and then
Sure.
trying to find it online, I'm just like, where are you?
With ACX, at least for their audition process, and you can go exclusive with them or non-exclusive, and I went non-exclusive. I posted the project on Monday, and by end of Tuesday this week, I had like 19 auditions
Wow.
of all different voice ranges and different character styles, and it was just amazing. So you kind of pick, okay, I want a mid-range sort of dark voice for character X, and so character X is going to be main character, and so therefore you pick, okay, I want that for my narrator because that's obviously the most important character, and it worked out pretty well. It's amazing.
Awesome.
Nice.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Great. So tell us a little bit. In your book, do they wear sandals or shoes?
Well, we've got. Ow! Thank you. That hurts. Pointy. So the civilization that I'm writing about, basically 1,000 years before this book starts, everything was sort of Enlightenment age ideals, and there was a war with dragons, and the civilization declined since then. So we've gone from Enlightenment age sort of situation to Byzantium sort of situation. So you get some sandals, some boots, but bronze swords, things that are barely moving into the Iron Age, that sort of a thing. So
Yeah, that reads very sand and sandals to me as well.
So. Hooray! A new thing that I can use to advertise, which I'd never heard of before.
Is that an actual category on it?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I was desperately trying to shoehorn my book into it, but it just didn't fit.
Oh, good to know. Good to know. I learned all these things.
Because while sword and sorcery, as far as tags on Amazon, is like 1 out of 400,000, sword and sandals is like 1 out of 2,000.
What?
1 out of 2,500.
Yes, new categories for Amazon.
So
Hooray.
it gives you a better chance to get some eyes on your stuff. It just mine didn't fit at all.
Oh,
and I felt
okay.
I felt not right about trying to shoehorn it into something it wasn't.
Sure.
I never want to disappoint folk.
Sure. Well, that's good to know. Yes, I have learned all of these new genres like flintlock fantasy. I didn't know that was a thing until about 6 months ago, and now I understand why it's a thing. So
Yeah, I mean, the amount of different, genres or categories really out there is just the way the world has progressed in being like, oh, niche, hobbies are actually really cool. Oh, there's actually other people who like these niche things. Let's come together and make like a little category about it. It's actually really interesting and like neat, especially for advertising your book, right?
yeah, which is obviously the hardest part of all things.
Yes, it is.
It's kind of like if you're running Facebook ads and you get to pick exactly the interests the person would have.
Right. Right.
Really nail it down.
Oh, see, these are useful things to know.
See, absolutely. Glad you came on today.
EG, I have a question for you.
Yes.
How did you come up with the concept of kind of like the reverse magic people find humans versus humans find magic?
You ask hard questions.
Oh, I love that.
I don't know. I don't know. I just kind of like the idea of the usual things like you do with the chosen one, except it's the mentor. So this is a lot of the times I see in fantasy is, oh, look, I'm, poor, weak, little pitiful human and magic, which is exciting. I'm happy to read all of those books. But I kind of like going the other way around with, what the heck are these things? They've got like swords, but no magic. What's going on?
That's really interesting. I mean, I think what's cool about, a lot of fantasy books is that they're able to kind of take, what you're normally thinking about and then just like flip it.
Yeah.
which always makes for an even more interesting book.
Yeah,
Without a
it was
doubt.
fun. I
A
had
la
fun
like
with it.
Wicked, or I forget the name of it, but there was a Peter Pan book
Yes.
that
Oh,
made Hook the hero and Pan
Yeah.
the bad guy.
yes, yes.
Exactly,
That
turning
was
things around.
fantastic.
Tell me, when you started your 3-book series, just because we were talking about it with Sean, did you sketch out everything? Were you kind of surprised where things went? What happened with that?
I apologize for the noise in the background. My Roomba vacuum is coming into the room.
Skynet.
Hudson, go away.
This is when it happens. Skynet takes over.
Curse you.
Begins with the Roombas.
Well, Hudson is not the most intelligent vacuum in the world, I have to say.
I have a feeling EG's next book is going to be about her cat and her Roomba in an epic
Actually,
war.
no, the
you ever
next
see
book
the
is
commer-
about marketing agent for Death because, Death needs some help. Hold on. I'm going to go dispose of Hudson for a moment.
Well, only a writer would have a name for a vacuum
for
cleaner.
her vacuum.
I was thinking, who's Hudson? All right, so we got Hudson quieted.
Silly
Hudson all taken care of?
technology. Hudson's
All right.
taken care of.
Fantastic.
Do we want to
So-
know
Yes.
what you did with Hudson? Or do we
Hudson off?
Or are we going to have to testify in court?
No. No, Hudson is resilient. Very
yes,
resilient.
I think we planned your next book, and it's The Cat in the Roomba.
No, next book is Marketing Agent for Death.
Okay.
I like that.
Yeah. Slightly different than, epic fantasy style thing.
Is it a
More
standalone or is it a series?
Oh, it's a series.
Yeah.
Yeah, poor Cal. Main character is Cal Thorpe. He gets hired by Death, and it goes downhill from there.
And how far
mean-
into that are you?
I have 6 books written. It's not out yet,
Wow.
the series. So these are shorter books. They're about 55 to 60,000 words. So I've got 6 books written. First one will be released sometime this summer, middle
That's
of
awesome.
June-ish.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
But why did you write them all in advance without releasing any of them?
That's a long story.
Okay.
So I had written the first one as sort of a break from some of the more involved stories that I do, because I needed something lighthearted. And it turned out I really enjoyed writing it. It was meant to be just, a one-off thing, and it wasn't. There's so many things you can do with that poor character. So I ended up, okay, this is interesting. Let's try a second one to see if I can even continue the story, and I did. And then I sent it off to a friend of mine, Michael Evan. He found it interesting and said, "Hey, you should do something more with this." And so it kind of went from there. And I didn't publish anything yet because I had wanted to get enough of them together so that I could put them out quick enough that people would have, a short story and then another shorter book, because they're so quick to write. Then if you have more of them coming out at once, I think it'd be more interesting.
So there's actually there's a whole group of people, and you guys might have heard of this before. It's like 20 books to 50K.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
And they're all about quick
Rapid
releases.
release, yep.
Yeah, so doing it like on a month by month basis to really kind of essentially keep the readers engaged, and also
Sure.
like your second month release actually helps boost your first month, and cascades like that.
Yeah. And so I'll probably do something like that. I don't know if I'll do, since I've got 6 written, I can do, steady for a while, but after that, since I have several projects I want to work on, because I'm possibly taking on too much, but I enjoy it. So,
And if not every month, every 2 months or 3 months, just because the Amazon algorithm drops off after 90 days.
yes.
That's when you start losing. So that 20 books to 50K, going with the Amazon algorithm, you have 90 days. And then as this one starts to drop, you come out with the next book, which pushes up book 1. And
Yeah.
you certainly have enough books with that many. If you did 90 days apart or 3 months, you can get through a couple of years there.
Yeah.
Yes. I write fairly quickly. It's just the way my brain works. I'm really good at words. If you want me to do math, you're snookered, but I can do words like you wouldn't believe. So I write very quickly and I read very quickly. And so I can do a full book in about a draft about 3 months. It takes me to do 80K words or so. Granted, I do this every day, so that helps a little
Are
bit.
you a full-time writer?
Yeah, full-time writer, although I will do
That is
book reviews and
awesome.
such also.
I would straight up kill somebody to be a full-time writer.
Don't be
I
too
mean,
jealous. Don't be too jealous.
That sounds like its own book right there.
Yeah, killing people to be
Yeah.
a full-time writer.
Ooh. Yep. No, don't be
It's-
too jealous. I had saved up funds before this so that I could do it for 3 years straight and then figure out if it works or not. And so far, doing okay. Not great,
Nice.
but okay.
Congratulations. You
I mean,
have a lot to be proud of.
All it takes is like that one thing to make it go.
Yes. Yes.
So even if it's just going okay, maybe it'll just like skyrocket one day.
That's the
dream.
plan.
And as a full-time writer, she could pick which state to live in by who's giving the money too.
Yes.
We're having that conversation about which states right now are giving the money for you to move in. So, the full-time writers can live in West Virginia or North Dakota or any of
Yeah, except I'm going to Missouri, which isn't paying me.
Missouri's not paying you? Oh.
No, it's closer to family.
Oh, okay, close to family.
Well, that's important too.
Yeah.
But money is nice too, but hey.
I don't know.
Nice. Oh well. Our third guest today is S.L. Harby, the author of Shadow of a Dream. I definitely want to hear all about the game in Shadow of a Dream, and that's quite the funky book cover there. So do you have it there to hold up?
I do. For some reason, mine's all backwards. It's got to be something with my Zoom settings.
We see it frontwards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it looks
that's awesome.
frontwards.
Yeah, no, it looks great.
So it's
I think we do. I think we went 3 for 3 on awesome book covers.
I appreciate that.
Absolutely.
I really love this book cover. When I was thinking about it, I was trying to really harken back to the book covers of the 80s, not quite like that Conan style art, but more like the art you would see on like Lawrence Watt Evans, like Misenchanted Sword with a single spell. Just sort of a simple, pseudo-realistic, but not really realistic style. So I was super happy.
Very cool.
Shadows of the Dream, it's about a man in his late 20s, early 30s, lifetime, tabletop gamer. He is beset with some tragedies, both in his past and duplicating themselves now in his present. And he finds out that the dreams he's been having about this world, that he's been basing this game on, are actually events that are occurring in this other world in which everyone has a reflection.
Ooh.
It's not necessarily you, but it shares, it shares a lot of qualities. And when he sleeps, he possesses his reflection on the other side. And he has to solve the murder of his friends on both sides as the murder is occurring in both worlds.
Right.
Not really knowing who to trust. So he has to try to figure it out before he ends up, joining them in death. I like to quick elevator pitch. I always call it never ending story all grown up.
Wow.
This sounds like, oh my gosh, it's like adaptation meets Avatar meets the Westworld.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Schmancer.
Meets like a Sherlock detective story. Like it's just insane. It sounds so good.
Yeah.
I hope people enjoy it. It has a mix of like your sword, not so much sorcery. There is magic, but my world is sort of a low magic world where magic, if you have magic, it puts you at a certain level that not a lot of people are going to get to. The main character doesn't really have magic, right? Like he's he's what I would call your common man, right? Like he gets through it with some quick thinking, a lot of luck, and some help from some new friends.
Question. So does what happens in either world affect each other? Is there like a one-to-one corollary?
There is, it seems, I know the truth, but it seems that if one dies in one world, it will kill your reflection. So if you die in
Oh.
Tyr, you die on Earth.
I'm gonna add the Matrix to what it sounds like. I'm like,
Yes,
it's just like
And-
taking all the best things and putting them together.
And I came up with a sort of a theory of otherworldly relativity, because time doesn't flow the same between the worlds, but it doesn't always flow the same way between trips either. So one trip, you sleep for 8 hours and you spend a week in Tyr. The next trip, you sleep for 8 hours and you spend 15 minutes.
Oh, that's fantastic.
There's like a relativity that sort of keeps everything in balance, sort of.
If I was the main character, I'd be so mad. It's like, I'm just gonna take a quick nap. Oh wait, it's Thursday now.
It's Thursday. But it also sort of does a little bit of a examination of sort of lives and how you live them. Like, the main character is very disappointed in his life. He had a lot of potential when he was younger, and he never really sort of reached that, whether it's due to these tragedies or whether it's due to some choices he's made. And he's not so happy with his relationship, and he's not so happy with his job. And now this, his ability to go to Tyr via his reflection really offers him a lot of opportunity, but also a lot of perspective on the man he is and the man he wanted to be. So
Interesting.
I'm just. Go ahead.
Oh.
Nope.
I was going to ask if it's anything like the, parallel reality sort of string theory physics thing that I only understand slightly.
It's definitely got like it's not explicitly explained, because I would be afraid if I tried to take my understanding of relativity and string theory and try to put it on the page, because we all know fantasy readers are loyal and awesome, but if you misstep, they're not shy about letting you know that's not how things work.
So I was at a writing workshop, which, the last one was virtual, but a couple of years ago with like real people, which was awesome. And there was a presenter who was talking about sci-fi and fantasy and writing about it and stuff. And he had this really awesome kind of like quote unquote rule where in each book or each story, you get kind of one kind of, that's just how it works. And everything else has to actually make sense. Like you can't, like you can just say like, yeah, warp speed, that's how it works. But then you can't like break rules for everything else, because once you break too many rules, then the readers are like, no, this does not how it works and stuff. So that's what it reminded me of. Like you can say like, oh yeah, we made up like, like this is how, the other world relativity and time works, and people will just accept it. Like, okay, that's how it works. But if you start to break more.
Huh.
Yeah, I 100%. I attempt to stick to as many rules as I possibly can. Like I try not to explicitly state any rules, so I can sort of massage it as we go. Because very much like you, Sean, I am the penultimate pantser, right? Like I start and I write, and then I've got to go all the way back and and make sure that there's consistency throughout.
Consistency is hard.
So SL, is this a standalone, or is there going to be more?
There is going to be more. There's a second book, which I'm in the process of writing. I'm about 40,000 words in, called Shadows of the Heart, which involves the main character from this book. But in truth, the main character of Shadows of the Heart is another person who is reflecting. Her name is Jillian, and her reflection's name is a sage. And I think Sean, your audio is not coming through. Can anyone else hear him?
Nope, I can't
hear
hear
me
him.
now?
There we go. We hear
Yes,
you.
you're back.
Yay.
Sorry. I'm already envisioning this as like an Amazon Prime series that I'm going to watch in the future.
I would love it. Like
Oh.
I would absolutely like, and a
That would be
lot of
cool.
my stuff. I
I say
too
yes.
very much like my very much like my main character. I'm a lifelong gamer. Like I started playing D&D in the summer of 1980,
Mhm.
and really haven't stopped for 40 some odd years.
I mean, just
Awesome.
the language of like reflection is just so evocative of like I can just see it done a million different ways. I don't know how it's done in the book. I'm excited to read it. And it's just like how you go from like one world to a different to your reflection world, and it's just like
It
that's
is
just
interesting.
it's so visual.
I definitely don't want to ruin it, but
Right.
pick it up. It's I think it's good. I enjoy it. Like I've read it like multiple times, even after, and mostly as I'm writing the new one. My main problem is that, much like in my tabletop gaming life, I am definitely got a little bit of ADD going on. So just this week, I started writing something else. I haven't finished Shadows of the Heart yet, but I started writing a young adult superhero story,
Nice.
which that's got my interest now. So I'm going to at least try to get a couple chapters done on that, and then I'll go
Yeah.
back to Shadows of the Heart.
Do you have a cool tagline for that one?
For that one, I don't.
Because like EG's other series, like the marketing person for death, like
Guy.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
that tagline, like I don't even know if you have a tagline, but like you only need just like one sentence and you're just like I'm hooked.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is absolutely awesome.
No, and it's awesome to be able to describe your book in something so succinct. Like,
Yes.
how many people in your life ask you, so what's it about? And to be able to say it just like that, EG, that was awesome.
That is fantastic.
Now you all know. Like we're like, oh, I want that.
And you did the thing where it's just like I forgot exactly what you said, but it was like person or death has hired this person to
And it
be a
goes
marketer.
downhill from there.
Yeah.
That's
And
pretty
you're
much
just like
every
ugh.
description on every single book in the series will be, okay, here's this thing that's happening, and it went downhill from there.
Yeah. That's so
Awesome.
perfect.
Yeah, no, and you obviously took marketing to be able to know to do that. You think like a marketer because you have to be able to say these things quick and get them out there, and awesome.
Yeah, mostly it was just I had fun with being slightly snarky and sarcastic, and how can I make this character's life even worse?
Yeah, I feel like our characters hate us, right? Like they're
This is
just living their
possible.
lives and doing their thing, and then we come along and just complicate.
I mean,
Yes.
Oliver, my character, he was basically like a young Tony Stark in my fantasy world, and I just completely destroyed his life. So he
You better hope reflection's not a thing, or he's coming for you.
A part of me says, good for you, and then the other part of me says, well, bummer.
yeah. But oh man. I mean, it's like when WandaVision came out and everybody on Earth who's a scriptwriter was just like, how could you come up with a perfect line such as what is grief but not love persevering? And every scriptwriter in the world is just like, you came up with the perfect line. That's how I feel about your tagline. It's just like,
Why, thank you.
Yeah, no, a good tagline. That's gold.
I have my own
It
book
is.
for like 3 years, and I'm just like, it's people and words and swords and dragons and stuff.
I find that acceptable.
Well, especially once you added the sandals, then I was like, right,
Yeah, the sandals.
Yeah,
The sandals help.
the
Well,
sandals
the key in my fantasy world is they're Velcro sandals.
Woo!
I'm just kidding. They're not. There's no Velcro.
Oh, I would have been so impressed.
But there are trains, which doesn't make sense, but it actually does, and you find out later in the series. So
And that goes with you can do one thing that doesn't really make sense, just how it is.
exactly. I've
Right, but
actually
just don't overdo it.
actually might have broken that because I was basically like, this is how magic works. And after publishing my book, I've decided like I'm going to spend the next 2 books saying actually what we thought about magic was wrong, and I'm just going to break all those rules. So really hoping they let me slide on the train thing.
I feel like that's an acceptable strategy. you know, science goes the same way. Oh yes, here's all these things. You know, mercury can cure diseases.
Just don't make them midichlorians. That's all I ask.
Absolutely. Well,
Actually, I was going to do with magichlorians. There's little things in your blood. No.
before we break, could we just remind our viewers of your book and where they can find you? Sean, do you have a website?
I do. It's SeanValiente.com. That's my author website. And you can also find my book on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. And now available on like a million different e-reading websites as of
Fantastic. You have
yesterday.
it right there for us?
Ah,
I do.
Yes. And if we go to SeanValiente.com, do you have a mailing list or something for us to sign up for?
I do. And you'll get a monthly author newsletter where I highlight other authors and I give writing tips and a meme of the month. And sometimes I write short stories and sometimes I just talk about other stuff.
All right, let's all head over to SeanValiente.com. Sounds great. E.G., tell us about, show us your book again, and there's plenty more.
yes.
There's plenty
Yes,
more
there's
where that
more.
came from.
There's that one, but there's plenty more. And where can we find you?
My website is egstone.com. You can head there. If you want to sign up for my mailing list, you will get a free full-length urban fantasy novel about a werecat, because why not?
What's the werecat's name?
As a human, she is called Victoria Wells because H.G. Wells is awesome. And as a cat, we go by Shadowstalker, which was not her choice, but that becomes later relevant in potential future free books for newsletter readers.
As a cat owner, I'm all over that one, so I'll be doing
I definitely include the, cat does not approve look, or the or the sandpaper tongue type of thing first thing in the morning.
Right, egstone.com. And SL, you have your book right there too?
I do. And my website is readslharby.com.
Ooh, read slharby.com.
And you can sign up for my newsletter. On the site itself, there are, I think at this point, there's 4 or 5 short stories between 6 and 12,000 words, which give you some background on the world and some introduction to some of the characters. Not required to read the book, but just sort of helps you,
fun stuff.
Helps you get some relevance. I also do creator interviews, book reviews, and my newsletters there. I can be found on Kindle Unlimited. I'm also on Facebook or Twitter. I love talking to folks, so drop me a line on any of those, and I'll talk to you until you block me.
Love that.
I love talking fantasy, sci-fi, whatever.
I understand.
Thank you so much for joining us between the covers, and let's get out there and get those books. Thanks for joining us on Between the Covers. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you're an author who would be interested in appearing on our show, or perhaps you're a member of a book club, we do host book clubs as well, please visit BetweenTheCoversTV.com. By the way, at BetweenTheCoversTV.com, you can watch past episodes in addition to learning more about our authors and guests. So sign up there if you would like to be a guest on the show yourself. And if you have some books that you would like to get written or published, visit redpenguinbooks.com. Thanks so much for joining us.